Hello and welcome back to the Feminine Frequency. Today I am joined by a beautiful guest, Lindsey Christian, who is a cycle harmony coach. Lindsey, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie, for having me. I'm so excited to be in this space and just to grow and learn more together.
For sure, for sure. It's wonderful to connect. We connected, I think, on Instagram or yeah, or
Yeah,
whatever.
one of those threads,
Yeah.
Instagram, the whole space. Yeah.
Cyberspace. And your specialty, is just your specialty of helping women really sync with their natural cycles and understand their natural cycles on a deeper level is such a vital piece to the whole conversation of feminine embodiment, feminine
Mhm.
energetics, and empowerment. So I really am thrilled that you agreed to be on the podcast and speak to that
Yeah, of
today.
course.
Um, and if we could, I'd love to just, ask you to give a little bit of background, a little bit of your story and how you got into this particular line of work.
Sure, absolutely. So, for about the last 4 to 5 years is where I focused more on like the metaphysical things, emotions, chakras, divine feminine energy, masculine energy, all of that good stuff. And so I learned a lot when it comes to the wisdom and the intangible side of everything. But my own personal journey really began last year when I went through a lot of life changes and a lot of hormonal imbalances. And I was like, what is going on? I noticed that I couldn't lose the weight. My energy was so low, like I was so fatigued every day. Like I had maybe 2 hours of energy a day and getting like excessive chin hair. Like clearly it was a hormonal problem. And I was just like, what is going on? Is it just because I'm a new age now? Is it the stress? Like, what is happening? And it was really frustrating. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to learn more about my body. I need to learn more about hormones and like what's going on because I feel awful. And that's when I got into acupuncture and went to my acupuncturist, and she was able to give me a lot more insight as to like, hey, well, this has to do with really your liver, your thyroid, and all of that. And I was like, huh? Like, what is all this? So that's kind of
Yeah.
where I went down the rabbit hole of learning more of the health side of things. And once I started to heal my own body and see the changes and see that I was getting back on track to where I was like, okay, there's something to this. And being able to pair it with not just the physical conditions, but the emotions that I was feeling as well, and how I was holding on and suppressing a lot and connecting that to even the different chakras. So once I was able to kind of pull that holistic viewpoint together, I was like, okay, I have a system, because I would go to my regular doctor and say like, hey, I've got all these symptoms, like here's the blood work, what's going on? And it's more like, well, I mean, you can change your diet and we could do birth control. And it's like, no, it's not what I want. So it didn't leave me with much, and it really
Yeah.
put a lot of the responsibility on myself to really learn how do I take care of my body, because I just couldn't find the information to be available for me. I really had to do it myself.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of my own personal journey of like what I went through. And of course, even though it became a hormonal issue, it was really more a sleep issue, a stress issue, a diet issue, a moving my
Right.
body issue that then affected my hormones. And once I
Oh,
had to get back on track, that's when I was like, okay, we need a system. And then I felt so empowered by that. And I knew that other women, especially in my age, were dealing with the same thing, that
yeah.
I got my certification when it comes to cycle coaching so that I can have like a full, more valuable perspective on how we can educate ourselves on our bodies, but also tying in the metaphysical side as well.
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that, Lindsay. That's
No problem. I know it's a lot,
great.
but that's how I
No,
got
not
here.
at all. Yeah. No, it's relatable for sure. Just sort of having these symptoms and feelings and sensations and changes in our body, and then, not being able to find a satisfactory answer in
Mhm.
the traditional, you know, um, medical viewpoints that we're accustomed to. So, I think that's very, very relatable for sure. For women in particular. Would you, was that perimenopause, did you learn, or no?
No, no,
Okay.
not at all. Yeah, no, I am in my, well, at the time when I was going through everything was about 32, 33.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I
And
mean, you look
then,
young, by the way, but I just didn't know
thank
because that
you.
can be a very flexible range,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. And there's some women, especially according to like their environment and what they're exposed to, can accelerate that perimenopause to even like 29, like really early. So, I mean, there's so many factors where our bodies are just so complex and sensitive that literally everything affects us on every level. So that's why it's so important that we know, like, just to have more awareness on what's really affecting us on a deeper level.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So for today, you wanted to speak a little bit about kind of the relationship between our chakra system, our energy centers of our bodies, and our cycles.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would love to kind of hear about that because that's something I have never heard anyone talk about.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah.
So, I have gained a lot of knowledge when it comes to the chakra system on a super deep level. I mean, more than just like, hey, just eat some red foods and your root chakra is all good to go, right? So once I learned that, I knew certain things that were correlated with the energies of different chakras, but it wasn't really until I learned more about how the hormones that shift through each phase affect us when it comes to like the changes to our brain, the changes to our physical body, just our behavior, our moods. From there, once I learned that, I was like, wait a minute, there's a strong correlation with how we feel when it comes to different chakras as well. So I've kind of paired about two chakras for each phase and recognizing that there's about two chakras that have a little bit more tension or a little more active during each phase of our cycle. And so, what I've experienced in my own personal journey is when I don't take care of those chakras during those phases, I feel more frustrated when it comes to relating to the different chakras. So, I'll just do like a little recap.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, just in case if there's anyone out there is like, what is a chakra? I know when I first heard that, I was like, chakra, what? Like, what is this? It seemed so like far-fetched and like I couldn't understand it, but once I educated
Yeah.
myself, I was like, oh, this makes total sense. So we actually have probably 12 or more chakras, but we have seven personal chakras that everybody is a little bit more familiar with.
Mhm.
So we have our root chakra, which is going to be our first chakra, and that has to do with our stability, feeling grounded, feeling supported, but it also has to do with our physical body as a whole. So everything to keep you alive, keep
Mm.
you surviving. So that's going to be related to our adrenal glands as well, the fight or flight. It's going to go right down to the root. So if we don't feel safe, then a lot of things are just not going to, we can't really feel confident. We're not going to feel creative and feel fun. We're really focused on survival. So that would be our root chakra, and it's represented by the color red. And then we have our sacral chakra, which is the next one up. And also, just to backtrack a little bit, every other chakra is either associated with a feminine or masculine energy, except for the crown chakra. So when we start with the root chakra, that's going to be our divine masculine energy. So if you think of like protection, groundedness, feeling like
Yeah.
strength and family, support, all of that good stuff, that's more of kind of like that root energy. but it's also kind of that strong masculine energy as well. And then we move up
Yeah.
to our sacral energy, and that's going to be like our first feminine energy. If you think about it, we really dominate that, especially for women, where we create life. It's like the powerhouse for sacral energy, which is like our womb space. Also connects to our intimate connections, pleasure, fun, um, creativity. I probably said that already, sensuality. And then as we move up, we're going to go up to our solar plexus, which is kind of like our digestive area. It's yellow, so it's like our actual physical energy, how energetic we feel. Also, like our personal power and feeling strong within ourselves, being able to set better boundaries. And it really has to do with like your personality, your ego, your
Mhm.
identity is really there. So if we struggle with standing up for ourselves or being able to feel comfortable in who we are in our own personal skin. If we struggle with that, we want to look at the solar plexus for sure. And then we move up and we've got our heart chakra. That's going to be our next feminine energy. So that's the nurturing energy, the compassion, the understanding, the empathy. And it's a very healing chakra. When we think about the heart, it's love, and that really has the capacity to heal a lot of different things when it comes to our even our own physical conditions and emotions and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Um, and then we move up to our throat chakra, which is going to be our next masculine energy that has to do with our communication. If we're speaking up for ourselves, if we're speaking our truth, if we're being honest, it really likes honesty. It really likes to be clear and pure. So when we do a lot of lying or holding our tongues back too often, we struggle with a lot of feeling blocked, feeling frustrated, and being able to express ourselves, feeling like we can't be heard. So if we're yelling a lot of times we don't feel heard. So it can go on
Mhm.
and on. You know, we could do a podcast on each chakra, honestly.
Right.
Um, and
Sure.
then, yeah, definitely. And then from the throat chakra is the third eye chakra. So that has to do with your intuition, your discernment, your mental clarity, your spiritual vision as well. Also connecting to your sleep, your dreams, things of that
Mm.
nature.
Mhm.
And then the last one is going to be your crown chakra, which is neither masculine or feminine. It's universal energy, connecting to higher power, connecting to all things, and also having that it's like a second level of empathy where you truly see the connection of yourself in all things. You don't
Yeah.
see separation in anything. You see God, you see yourself or higher power in all things through the crown chakra. So that's a little bit about the
Mhm.
chakra system, a little like crash
Crash
summary of
course.
that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was beautiful,
Okay,
beautiful
good.
review and overview. And I actually had never heard of the feminine and masculine association of the chakras. So that was
Yeah.
really interesting.
Thank
Thank
you. Yeah. So when I teach divine feminine energy, I'm pulling from the feminine chakras. So I'll see a lot of different information out there that's like, this is feminine energy. No, this is feminine energy. And everyone has different perspectives, and that's totally
Right.
cool. But
Mhm.
I focus more on like, the sacral creativity, sensuality, things of that nature, your heart, your nurturing energy, your compassion, your empathy, and then your third eye, your intuition, and things of that nature. So we, as women, naturally do dominate those energies just because of how we're built hormonally. That just tends to come a little more natural. Doesn't mean that men are intuitive or nurturing.
Right.
Men have feminine and masculine energy just as we have masculine energy, but we tend
Mhm.
to struggle a little bit more. Majority of women tend to struggle a little bit more with speaking up for themselves, being able to vocalize how they're feeling. We tend to struggle with feeling strong and feeling confident. That tends to be a common thing for women. Or sometimes we tend to struggle with feeling grounded or feeling secure or stable. A lot of times we can go off the handles very easily, whereas men tend to
Yeah.
dominate those, and that doesn't seem to be much of a challenge for them. Like, I don't know how many men I've talked to where it comes to like the job interview, and they're like, they'll have like two, qualifications on the resume. They're like, oh, I got this. We're fine. I'm
Exactly.
confident. But with women, it's like, oh no, like I don't have one thing on here. I can't do this. So we can tend to have some of those struggles. So that's where I teach feminine and masculine energy from those perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes all the sense. It really does.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, yeah. I mean, even within myself, I can sense like that the feminine ones are stronger,
Hmm.
and the other ones are the ones where I've really had to focus on and do more work to
Yeah, for
strengthen.
sure. Yeah,
But it's also
absolutely.
beautiful that we have that balance, right? That we all
Yeah.
have these seven chakras. We all have the feminine, the masculine. We all have access and
Mhm.
we all have the capacity, at least, to bring balance and harmony to that energetic body.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love it so much. It just makes things so much easier to pinpoint when am I feeling, oh, this is related to this? Okay, I could do something about it. I just want to be able to have a tool or system to be able to help me navigate life, which is, we're all going through different life challenges. So it's just nice to
Yeah,
have something to fall back on so that you can get yourself back into alignment and harmony, which is my main focus is harmony. And harmony looks different for everyone, but we all know how it feels when we are in harmony. So that's kind of my main focus with that.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
So now that we kind of covered a little bit of the chakras, it'll make it a little bit easier to make those connections with those different phases for our cycle system, which I love, right? Once I really learned a little bit more about those different phases and what's going on, I just like totally fell in love with it. I have such a new perspective and a newfound love for my own body. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like some divine engineering right here. Like, this is pretty cool. Like, oh my goodness, my body is awesome. So I'm really excited to tap into that.
That's amazing. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
for sure, for sure. So I'll just start off with um I do focus on 5 phases. I know a lot of times
Mhm.
people say 4, but I like to break it up into 5 because the last phase, which is like our late luteal phase, is it's very much different than the rest of the other phases, according to what's going on with their
Yeah.
bodies, right? So for the menstrual phase, that is going to be very much connected to our root and our third eye chakra. So root chakra, for obvious reasons,
Mhm.
we really need a lot more support during that time. Our body is going through a lot, but we also do need more of the red foods and foods that are higher in iron, obviously, because
Mhm.
we're losing a lot of the iron. We're losing a lot of our minerals and things of that nature through that menstrual phase. So we want to focus more on comfort, on safety, on feeling supported, on stability, on feeling grounded. And even if that's just cuddling up with a nice warm heated blanket, just to give you that feeling of security within your body, it's going to help. That's really the main time when your body is really looking for that. So our root chakra is going to be very active during that menstrual phase because our body needs more. It's in that time of survival in a way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're feeling I just started my period today. It's
Oh,
just
really? Okay.
yeah, so I'm in it.
Cool.
And it's just, yeah, you're very connected to your body, right? Because it's
Yeah.
something very physical and
Yes.
it's like undeniable. Like you're very much in the physicality of your humanness.
Yes, yes, we very
Yeah.
much are in our physical, very much during this time. So, getting enough support, getting enough nutrients, like really focusing on caring for your body is going to be most important during this time. But then what's also really, really cool is that our third eye is also activated during this time. The
Hmm.
right hemisphere of your brain is actually more active during your menstrual phases. So due to the changes in your hormones, your estrogen and your other hormone, progesterone, is very low, but it starts to increase. Your estrogen starts to increase during this time. So during this change of your estrogen increasing, this right hemisphere side of your brain is more active, which is tied more to your intuition, your creativity, just more of that side of yourself. It's also kind of more of that introspective time as well. So whatever
Yeah.
you do to tap into your intuition, like this is a really good time to do it. Also, there's also that report that we need up to like 10 hours of sleep during this time as well for women, which is like I can't do that. I mean, I can get it through naps probably, but my pets wake me up at like 6:37. So I mean, I could try, but I mean, I'm like
Yeah.
really happy if I can get close to 8. That's like an awesome sleep for me. So
But
if we,
maybe taking just extra rest,
yeah,
in
rest.
the evening or throughout the day, even if you're not asleep. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So, prioritizing rest is going to be so crucial for this phase. Um, so, but that's also like sometimes we look at this phase like, ugh, but
Yeah.
knowing like, hey, but my intuition is actually a lot stronger during this time. So, if you have any kind of hunches that come up for you, maybe tune into it, listen to it a little bit more because it can actually be tapping into your own personal intuition, which can be a lot stronger during this time.
Yeah. And taking that time for rest and stillness can also
Mhm.
be beneficial to letting things drop in and just noticing, being more aware and open to our intuitive senses.
Yeah, it's a really good time to pause and just slow down and, whether you're journaling or whatever, just to connect deeper within yourself. It's really good time to do that. So
Sure.
that's kind of how I look at it. So it's kind of given me a new perspective on just the benefits of each phase. So I can if I'm trying to operate as in how I would normally operate when I feel awesome, I'm kind of discrediting myself during this phase because I'm missing some of the advantages. I think
Yeah.
that sometimes we look at like maybe the other phases, maybe in our follicular phase or ovulation phase, when we feel more energized, we feel like our mood is more stable, we kind of see that as I'm better or healthier during these phases. But it's not necessarily the case. We're just different and there's different advantages. So it's like, man, I'm going to look forward to this time to like, this is my slow down time. I can get, whatever I need. If I need extra support, I'm not going to feel guilty for asking for that support. And we find that if I
Yeah.
don't know if you've noticed this, but when you don't get support during this time or when you're not getting enough rest or nutrients, you feel it. Like you might feel even more
Absolutely.
frustrated, like I'm not getting support here. I'm not getting what I need. I don't feel safe. I don't feel grounded. I don't feel secure. When we don't feel that during this time, it feels a lot stronger. So we want to give that to ourselves as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Not,
Hmm.
overdoing it or putting a lot of pressure on yourself to, function really highly and
Hmm.
do big projects or go out, and have like a big night, obviously,
Oh
when,
yeah. Oh
you know,
yeah.
and I think it's also a time of, a lot of release, just
Yes.
physically, obviously, and also emotionally and
Yes.
mentally. I feel like I do look forward to that. I look forward to, what, it's going to be a little uncomfortable,
Mhm.
for a day or two, and then it's going to feel so good because of this releasing aspect of that
Yes.
phase. It's
Yeah.
clearing away any stagnant energy or,
Mhm.
you know, recurring thoughts maybe, or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
fears, doubts, and it just feels like a fresh start.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's one of my like most exciting things about it. It's like, okay, it's a new cycle. We're gonna start fresh. We're gonna do things differently this time. And just gives you that new reset that we don't have to wait till the new year or birthday or some other event to start
Mm,
fresh for ourselves. It's our own personal reset time that's unique to you. So I love that. Also, just speaking a little bit more about stability and security, also emotional stability and security as well. I will find that if I do not protect myself during this time, or I open myself up to more conversations that I'm not too familiar with, if I don't know the person or I don't have that strong level of security with, I find that I'm obviously more sensitive during this time. So I will try my best if I can help it. Of course, you can't control literally everything, unfortunately. But if I can help it, I really try to protect myself with a lot of socializing that, hey, I don't know why, but it seems like people are just more offensive when you are more like sensitive. And I'm like, you wouldn't normally say that. Like, what is going on? So I try my best to protect myself emotionally to say, like, hey,
Mm,
are you prioritizing your emotional security as well? Are you opening yourself up to looking at things on social media that's going to make you feel awful during this time? We don't want to do that. We want to focus on feeling safe as much as possible.
build a little bunker, a
Yeah,
little energetic bunker around you. Yeah.
exactly. Just go in your cocoon for a little bit, you'll be
Yeah.
okay. So, so that would be a little bit more about how the chakras play a role in our menstrual phases. Do you have any other questions or like comments or anything when it comes to that phase?
Well, so how about, so you covered the menstrual part of the cycle, right? So
Mhm.
then, and you said that was third eye and root chakra related.
Yes, yes.
And then how about the other phases?
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to make sure before I go on to the next phase, there wasn't like
Oh,
something else that you wanted me to clear up. But yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, perfect. So for the follicular phase, which would be the next phase, that's when our body is maturing that new egg to be like the best one. It picks the best one, which I think is so cool as well. Once I realized that, it's like your
Oh,
body actually picks the best one that is available. It's the most dominant. So it's like, hey, recruit me. I think I can do it. I think I'm going to be the one to duplicate this super awesome person this month. So I'll do it
wow.
this month. Yeah.
I
So
didn't know that.
right? I didn't know that
That is very
either.
cool.
Yeah. Once I realized, like, I don't know why, but for some reason, like before I really learned that, I just thought, hey, like we already have all these eggs and they're just there and then they just like release them. We lay our eggs and if it works, it works. Not okay, cool. But I didn't
Yeah.
realize like those eggs are really not, they're not mature yet. They're not in their optimal stage. So that's why during this phase of our follicular time, that's what's happening. It's kind of pulling all your nutrients to build up that egg to be a little stronger so that it can
Just
um,
the one
just the
egg.
one. Yeah. Sometimes it's
Okay.
two, then we get
Oh,
twins,
right.
right?
Okay. Yep.
That's
Yep.
like, clearly your body thinks you're really awesome. They want you to be like just multiplied as much as possible. So, but typically there's that one really strong, dominant one, the follicle that's like, hey, like I think I could do this. I could be the next one. And so our body starts to increase in energy. Our estrogen starts to increase, and our estrogen is really strong point for building up that egg a little bit more. So that's
Hmm.
what's actually happening in our bodies during that time. And our estrogen level starts peaking, our mood starts to become more elevated and more balanced, and we have more energy, we feel better. So during this phase, our solar plexus, which is going to be related to our energy and our confidence and our sense of focus and
Yeah.
discipline, determination, is going to be stronger during this time. So this is a really good time to focus on those like new projects and like really like going in, focusing on exercising, doing some stronger exercises if you want to during this
Hmm.
time. And also digestion is also key. When because our estrogen is rising, it's going up, if we are consuming a lot of foods that are high in estrogen, what tends to happen is we get an excessive amount, which will then go into our liver. So if when it goes into our liver, if we have enough fiber, if we're eating a lot of good, healthy, digestive foods, then it's gonna clear that excess estrogen out. So we'll feel pretty good. So if you notice in the next phase, which I'll dive into a little bit more, when we go into the next phase, our ovulation phase, if you notice that you feel like breast tenderness or mood swings, or if you start feeling just a lot of swelling and things of that nature. If you notice a lot of acne or anything to do with that, it could be excessive amount of estrogen. So we want to kind of keep that from happening as much as possible by getting enough fiber in our diet so we can get rid of that excess estrogen so it's not reabsorbed into the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So
that's
what
throughout the cycle, we want to make sure of that, or
it's gonna
particularly the
Yeah, it's going to
the
be
oh,
stronger in our follicular phase and
mhm,
our
mhm.
ovulation phase because estrogen is naturally higher during those times. But for me, especially if you struggle with a hormonal imbalance, I like to just make sure I get enough fiber in on a regular basis just to make sure
Yeah.
that I'm just on track. But especially during that time because estrogen is just naturally higher.
And what foods have higher estrogen?
A lot of dairy foods are going to have higher estrogen, obviously, because it's dairy, it's coming from the milk of a cow that's
Yeah.
naturally more estrogenic. Um, a lot of soy has a lot of estrogen. It depends. So if you're sensitive to estrogen, I'm sorry, if you're sensitive to soy, then we want to kind of reduce that as much as possible. But soy naturally does have a lot of estrogen in it, but maybe getting more higher quality sources of soy, such as tempeh or miso, if you are going to consume soy, when it's very processed, the body has a hard time with um, e- getting rid of it, basically. So you can get an excessive amount through the soy. When it's more like fermented soy, it tends to have more fiber. So you're able to, even though you're getting estrogen in, your body's able to clear it out a lot easier.
It's really good to know.
Yeah, yeah. For some, also the meats, certain meats, if you do consume meat, may have more hormones and antibiotics and things of
Okay.
that nature in it. So that can also increase, that can cause a hormonal imbalance as well. So just
Hmm.
depends. But yeah, I'll create a whole list that you can share with they can get from my website. You can share with your listeners as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. So once I learned that, I was like, okay, got it.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought too much about, hormones in relation to food in diet.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just really amazing how everything sort of can work together here. Our energy centers, our diet, our natural cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. The other piece to the solar plexus is going to be the emotion of anger. So when we feel very angry, that is also tied to our solar plexus. And so typically, if you feel angry, maybe a boundary is violated and
Mhm.
it can go so deep. But what actually happens is when we deal with a lot of anger, we don't get it out. It gets repressed and suppressed. And the energy of anger, the chemicals that are released with anger is going to be cortisol and adrenaline. And those also affect the liver as well. So I like to mention to a lot of women sometimes if we're struggling with a lot of hormonal imbalance or things of that nature, are we suppressing our anger? Have we been angry for a long time? Are we holding in our anger? Um, because that can also be affecting our liver. So something that can also help with your liver is getting more bitter foods in, like obviously foods we don't want to eat, but it's really good for the liver. It's very cleansing for the liver. There's something called bitter melon. I don't know if you've had that before. It's like It's so bitter, but it's so good. It's so good for you if you can juice like
Oh,
some celery or some leaf, getting more leafy greens and things of that
celery.
nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, kale, things like that. That can be really good for helping to cleanse the liver. Also, getting a lot of cruciferous foods, such as like broccoli or cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Those are really, really good for cleansing the liver as well. Now, for me,
Mhm.
like being able to process those foods is kind of hard. My body like has a hard time breaking those things down. So I do like to implement a supplement. It's called DIM, DIM, which is has concentrated cruciferous. It's made from cruciferous foods, but it has the concentrated amount that helps to cleanse the liver as well. So that's something else that helped me along my hormonal imbalance journey to get myself back regulated and balanced again. So that's something else that we can do if we notice that our liver seems to be a little
Okay.
backed up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, Tai Chi is also very good for helping with anger as well. Just kind of having your body with more controlled, slow movements and processing your breath, like doing some more deep breathing and things of that nature can also help with anger as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we want to make sure that we're taking
I
care of
like to do a practice called swamping.
Oh, tell me more.
It's great for processing anger or any other emotions that are, that are kind of suppressed. So it's actually a practice I learned from Mama Gina, or AKA
Oh,
Regina Thomas Hauer. She's an author and uh, founder of the School of Womanly Arts. And all it is, it's very simple. You basically have a dance party with your emotions. So you put on
cool.
an angry song like Rage Against the Machine or something like that, and you
Yeah.
just let the anger like tell your body
Mm.
what to do. So you can kick and punch and thrash and bang your head or have a tantrum, whatever you need to do to like really feel the anger. Really allow yourself to feel it, allow yourself to be in the emotion. Don't hold back at all. And then we play a sad song, and same thing, you just kind of let the sadness, the grief, whatever needs to come up for healing. And you can sway and you can cry, you can stroke your body, like whatever needs to happen. And then lastly, we play a sexy song. And it's just like, and move your hips and really just like let go of anything else that needs to come out, but also kind of like alchemize the anger and the grief into like erotic energy,
Mm.
libido, creative life force. So it just has this amazing like effective transmutation as you go through
Mhm.
the three stages. So you end up feeling like a lot lighter, a lot clearer, intuitive, like just it's such a good release. It's a great,
Mhm.
great practice.
Oh, awesome. I'm gonna have to try that. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I just did it with a client yesterday and it was just so good. So
Oh,
good.
good. I love that. That's awesome. Um, okay, so I did talk a lot about the solar plexus, but
Yeah.
the other piece to your follicular phase is going to be your throat chakra. So during
Okay.
this time, our communication is actually really good. And just to clarify, our follicular phase does start with our menstrual phase. So we really only have two main phases, and then there's like sub phases under each one. So it's kind of like the moon, you have the full moon and the new moon, and then there's all these other little phases throughout each
Right.
phase. So we're very much
Hmm.
correlated with our moon phases. Um, so that's kind of a big piece to it. But as we go through our follicular phase, our estrogen level increases as we go all the way up to ovulation. So that's why it's kind of like a gradual build a little bit when it comes to our communication skills. But during that week after our menstrual phase, that's when our communication is a lot smoother. Both sides
Yeah.
of your brain are like actually communicating back and forth. So you're able to articulate things better. You're able to just kind of pull information a lot stronger without kind of getting all jumbled up in your speech, which can be very common later on. Like I've noticed that myself where I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
normally a good speaker. I can't get any words out. What's going on?
Yeah.
So it's just helpful to
Absolutely.
know. Yeah. And
I always try to time my, like if I'm doing a webinar or a master class, I try to time it with
yeah.
ovulation.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, that's when it's really like at its super peak during that time. So that's perfect.
Hmm.
Um, but this
And
could
is that
be,
because of the estrogen?
yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your estrogen also connects to memory as well, which is something I learned while I was in my certification. Where I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. But it's also very interesting because a lot of times when women go through menopause, they may notice that their memory may struggle a little bit. Or
Mm.
I've even had friends where their moms like are going through really, really early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's, and they just can't get their memory back. And it seems very abrupt because it's like, whoa, like what's going on? But that could be a reason. And there could be other reasons, obviously. There's other
Yeah.
factors, but estrogen also is a big component to memory. So that's when, if our estrogen is lower, maybe we do want to incorporate more estrogen-based, healthy estrogen-based foods like soy and things of
Oh,
that
right.
nature. Yeah, that can kind of help with that too. So yeah, so it's tied to our memory, it's tied to just different areas of our brain, and it's such a fabulous hormone, but it's actually
Yeah.
three parts, which is interesting. There's three different types of estrogen that make up one estrogen, one group of estrogen. We just say estrogen, but
Okay.
there's estradiol, and then
Hmm.
there's estrone, and estrone is probably the bad estrogen. That's what contributes to like breast cancer. That's kind of what's found in a lot of the plastics that people talk about. That's in a lot of the endocrine disruptors. That's in like fragrances and parabens and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, that would be one of it's a type of estrogen, but it's kind of like the bad side of the estrogen.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then there's another type, but I have to pull out it's not on the top of my brain right now. I have to pull it up for you. But yeah,
Right.
so once I learned that, I was like, okay, there's so much more to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All different layers. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So we want to get the healthy estrogen for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, so that helps us during that time to be able to communicate better.
Yeah. And it makes sense too if it helps with memory that that helps in communication as well. Because
Hmm.
sometimes, if you're not communicating well, it's like, what was that thing that I was gonna say?
Yep.
And that's what leads to the fumbling sometimes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So that can be a good time to practice good communication skills. Even if you're not the best communicator, that's going to be your
Yeah.
optimal time to practice good communication. So it sometimes takes
Mm.
a lot of courage to speak up and say what you want to say or speak your mind.
Yeah.
But knowing that you have a little help from your body and your natural hormones that can help you to say, okay, I can do it a little bit better now. You know what I mean? So sometimes we can kind of trick ourselves that we can tend to fall back on those moments where we weren't so good at communicating. And maybe we didn't know what phase we were in. And maybe we were not as
Right.
good with communicating and we're like, I'm just not a good communicator. I can't get my words out. And that may be the case during a certain time, but we also want to take advantage of times when our communication is stronger and just keep
Right.
practicing. Everything takes
Yeah.
practice. So
Maybe if you have like a really important conversation that
yeah.
you need to have, or a speaking event, you can try to
Mhm.
time it with that phase where you're going to be better at it, more
Yes.
articulate.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So we covered two phases, and
Yeah.
now we can move to the ovulation phase, which is still kind of part of that follicular phase. It's just that peak where everything is like really, really strong, and our body tries really, really hard to make us as attractive and beautiful as possible during this time, which I think is fascinating that it brings out like your glow in your skin. It can also like literally like kind of feminize your features even a little bit more to make it more enhanced, to increase those chances of
Wow.
attracting a mate. So we're like really, really attractive during this time. I love to focus on manifesting during this time as well, positioning yourself for those
Mhm.
really good opportunities, kind of doing what your body's doing, right? So your body is like positioning itself to like kind of get this egg all fertilized or whatever. So that's also a good time for you to embody that energy as well, to position yourself for the things that you want and things you want to attract into your life. So I love to
Mhm.
take advantage of that. Even though the ovulation time itself is very short, it's only like a day. There's
Oh, really?
yeah,
That's
yeah, it's really
wow.
only like maybe 12 to 24 hours. It's like it's a
Hmm.
very short time, but there's this buildup of energy that kind of wraps around it. So we start feeling the energy of it building up around ovulation around 3 to 4 days before that. So we can
Yeah.
kind of feel like that mood a lot longer. So to connect with this phase for the chakras is going to be the sacral chakra, which again is focused on like the intimate connections, your sensuality, creativity, pleasure, fun, all of that, socializing as well. So obviously we're naturally a little stronger with this during this time. And then also focusing on the solar plexus as well. So we still want to be mindful of our solar plexus. We still have more energy. We're still
Mhm.
very creative during this time. So it's kind of like you take off a little bit from each phase and you apply it to the next one when it comes to the solar plexus. So that's those are the two phases that I would focus on for around that ovulation time. It's like 3 to 5 days roughly. And then we notice that it shifts
Yeah.
quite quickly after that. Um, so
That's the luteal, right?
yes, yes. So I break the luteal phase up into two phases. Um,
Okay.
right after ovulation, the luteal phase starts immediately afterwards. And so what happens, right? So the egg is released. Well, that follicle that was like, hey, I'm the biggest, I'm more dominant, I can make this egg work this time. It transforms into like a little temporary gland that's called the corpus luteum. And that little gland produces what's called progesterone, which is the hormone that the body shifts to during this time. And that's all about, okay, we got the egg ready, the egg's good. Now we got to prepare the body in case we have a new life coming in. So
Oh,
progesterone is responsible for kind of preparing the body for pregnancy just in case during that first week, the early luteal phase.
it kind of it gets a head start
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
or
So it's
even,
like, yep,
yeah.
yeah, whether it happens or not, it's like just in case we want to like make sure we're good, right?
Wow.
So yeah, so that's when it starts kind of building up our uterus a little bit more and starts, making it nice and comfy for new life. And our temperature goes up, we feel warmer. It's all focused on that. But we go through all these phases, and our reproductive systems like pretty much kind of dictate our whole livelihood on how we feel, on our body, on our mood. And so that's why I focus on it so much, because it's like we are cyclical beings on a monthly basis, whereas men are cyclical on a daily basis. They just focus more on
Yeah.
their bodies is the circadian rhythm. We're circadian and monthly. So
Yeah.
we got two cycles going on. But during our early luteal phase, our heart chakra is going to be stronger because our empathy and our emotional sensitivity is stronger during this time. So we kind of have a little bit of that natural nurturing energy because the body is like, let's get prepared just in case. But our bodies, our minds are naturally like that. So this could be a really good time for nurturing the things you love, taking care of the things that you have, your loved ones. If you have pets, like give a little attention to your pets. If you have pets, your relationships, your family, whatever it is, and also yourself, having that self-compassion for you and practicing a little more self-love during this time is going to be really good. So if you notice that if your connections are not as strong during this time, or maybe you don't feel that level of empathy or things of that nature, you may feel a little more frustrated with your relationships or your connections with other people, or more sensitive to people during this time because your emotional intelligence is higher. So you're actually going to be more aware of when things aren't right. I'll just say that because it's
Yeah,
different for everybody. But
yeah, you'll
one,
sense the lack there a little.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So you'll be more sensitive, like, why didn't they call me back? Or why are they acting like this? Or why da 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 da? When in other phases, it wasn't maybe so strong, or maybe you didn't notice it as much. But you'll
could that
notice,
be where, sorry, where the typical like PMS behavior would come from then, or we're not there
um,
yet?
not yet,
Okay.
not yet, not yet. It can lead into that, but not yet.
Hmm.
So we want to give attention to the heart chakra space. So like I said, anytime we have a more active chakra, when you take good care of it, when you focus on the energy of that, you feel a lot better. But likewise, when we don't, we feel more stressed related to that. So it's out of balance, so we feel more uncomfortable when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So it's on heart chakra, but also your sacral chakra is still active, just in a different way. So we want to focus more on like the introspective side of creativity, maybe doing some creative expression of projects for yourself, or moving things around in the house, or
Mm.
decor, like more of the inner creativity versus the outer creativity that we would probably do during our closer to ovulation phase. So, of course, everyone's different. However you feel you want to express your creativity, it's totally up to you, right? I don't like to box women in or make women feel like they have to align with X, Y, and Z. We're just highlighting what's going on during those times so we can take advantage of it and be more aware. So that's going to be more active during that early luteal phase. Now, when it comes to the late luteal phase,
Mm.
that's when we start noticing what happens is that the body recognizes there was no fertilization. I did all this work all month long to duplicate this super awesome person, and it didn't happen. Drop everything, right? So now it stops making the progesterone. That little gland that was created starts to dissolve. So our body loses that that progesterone. And progesterone actually
Mm.
is very calming for us. It actually has a calming effect on our mind, so we can feel more sleepy sometimes, or we feel more relaxed, or we feel more at ease. So when we get to that late
Okay.
luteal phase and the progesterone drops, that's when we feel more anxious. We feel more tight. We feel our heart rate starts to feel a little irregular because of the drop of
Yeah.
the progesterone that was in the early luteal phase. So the body's
It's like,
like, "Hmm?
oh, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead, go ahead."
No, I was just, yeah, that I can, relate to. So there's like a drop off of the estrogen, which is that really juicy energy and
Mhm.
feeling kind of like our best self, attractive and everything else. And then, we're coming down off of that, and then the progesterone drops out and it's
Mm.
like
Yep.
funk.
Yep,
We're in the late
exactly.
luteal and you get that sort of like, down
Exactly.
in the dumps feeling.
Yes,
Like,
yes. So, what happens is since that little calming effect that we normally would have in the earlier phase, it drops. Now we're kind of left with whatever we've been doing, whatever our stress management techniques are, whatever our diet is, whatever our sleep is, whatever we have been doing, that's kind of what we're left with. And the good part about it is now I'm just going to give a disclaimer. I have dealt with varying degrees of how that can feel when you have PMDD and PMS, and like the mood changes can be so severe that it's like scary sometimes. So I know what that feels like, but also recognizing that we don't have to go through that. It doesn't have to be that. When we get enough vitamin B6 and enough magnesium in our diet, that can help with that mood support. So we can feel a little more balanced when we don't have that progesterone to help us calm. And when we don't have that estrogen to give us the energy, we can also make sure that we have it with our diet to help our mood to be stronger. So magnesium, we want to be really aware of it because it's been stripped from a lot of our soils. So
um,
sometimes we're not getting it as much as we normally would in our foods. So things like dark chocolate are really good for magnesium, which is why a lot of times women crave it during this time because the body's like, hey, we need something, right? Like help us out, right? Typically, we have a craving, that means our body's calling out for help. So we want to get some, maybe some dark chocolate. Vitamin B6 can be in like chicken, can be in eggs, can be in lots of protein-based foods. So that can be good for that as well. I don't eat chicken. I'm pescatarian. So I try to make sure that rather I get it from my protein sources or foods, that I get it from like a supplement, like just making sure that I'm taking the very best care of my body. Um,
mhm.
Also things that can help is going to be like evening primrose oil, and also getting enough healthy fats can help with it's called GABA, which is kind of like a receptor. You've heard of it, right?
I have heard of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly what it is.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we have these receptors in our brains that help with the mood support. And progesterone helps to the body to produce more of what's called GABA. So when it drops, you feel it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
things that can also help support it's going to be like lemon balm. It's really good for supporting that. So lemon balm tea can help. Evening primrose oils. So getting more natural fats in your diet can help as well with helping with that mood support. So the brain really likes to have like a lot of fat, not like bad, like awful fats, right? But
Big
the brain is
Macs,
most,
right?
yeah, the brain is mostly like fats and water. So if we're not hydrating ourselves as well, that's another reason why we can deal with a lot of the mood changes. And you would think like something as simple as water wouldn't do that, but it can. One of the other things is that because of the change to our progesterone levels, we can deal with more water retention. um, and so if we're having a lot, because we're having water retention, typically we're not drinking enough water. When we don't drink enough water, we crave salty stuff, which makes us retain water more. But the body is like, we don't have enough water, so we need to keep the water we have in as much as possible. So therefore, we start craving salty stuff. So when we drink more water, the body will balance itself out and it'll start releasing all of that extra puffiness that we're experiencing during that time. But that can help our mood as well. Actually, what's really interesting is like our emotion area of our brain has a lot of water content in that area as well, which is why when we have things like the full moon, which has a gravitational pull on water like it does in the ocean with the tides are higher, it also has that on our brains as well because it's 60% water. So we want to make sure we're drinking a lot of our water, natural water intake. I always say that we want to have 50% of our body's weight in ounces for water. Some people say, oh, drink a gallon a day, drink it. No, please only drink 50% of what your body weight is because we don't want to overhydrate ourselves, which can lead to dehydration because we have too much. So when we get enough water in, and that can actually help your emotions to be a little bit more at ease. So it doesn't
Yeah.
feel so tight and restricted. It's like how we feel is really how our body feels too, what our body's going through.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, we think and we talk about having, mental health and physical health and emotional health, but they're all really so intertwined and interconnected. They're all, you
Yeah.
almost can't pull them apart,
Exactly. It's all
really.
one piece. We are, all one piece, which is why I like the chakras so much because it encapsulates that. So that's what's going on. A lot of times when we're dealing with a lot of severe PMS symptoms is because we had the drop in the hormones, and if we're not getting enough nutrients, if our lifestyle, right, that's another piece. Like we're under a lot of stress. Your body's like, this is too much. Right? And we sometimes we try to be like super women all the time and like I could do it, I can handle it. Not all the time.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
And I
we
think
want to be mindful.
it
Yeah.
really helps your upcoming cycle when you do take that downtime during your menstrual phase and even your late luteal phase to just not be superwoman and give yourself a break, give yourself what you need, make yourself feel safe and protected and comfortable. And then your next cycle will be even more energized
Yes.
and productive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So being mindful of that, getting enough rest, getting enough sleep, and you'll start to notice those symptoms diminish more and more. So from my own personal experience, I had experienced moments of like very severe PMDD where I'm just like going off, like I feel awful, like I can't handle stress, I can't handle relationships, it's just too much. And I've had times where now that I've educated myself on what's going on and how I can help myself, no symptoms. None.
Wow.
No symptoms
That's
whatsoever. It's like
awesome.
yeah, like I am literally same mood, right?
Mhm.
So I will maybe I can feel a little subtle change, like, okay, maybe just take a nap, but nothing compared to what it was. And it's not birth control, right? It's none of these outside things that I would try to cover up my body with synthetically to try to make myself feel better by covering it up. I'm actually giving my body what it needs and helping myself so that it's sustainable.
Yeah.
So once I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, like I could have, it's a holistic thing. So
Yeah, because
yeah,
which, by the way, birth control and other, hormone treatments can have side effects and cause more
absolutely.
problems. I
Oh
know when I
yeah.
was on birth control, I was so depressed and anxious. Like
Oh
my
gosh.
moods were all over the place.
Oh
And I
my
didn't
gosh.
realize it was the birth control until I got off of it. And I was like, oh, it's not me.
Yep.
It was my
Yep.
hormones were all messed up.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we separate hormones from like really understanding how it affects our brain. And I went through the same thing with birth control like years ago. Um, and then it wasn't until now that I learned what's going on that I realized I wasn't crazy. It wasn't in my mind, just in my head. This is birth control. It's synthetic hormones that is not unique to your body, right? So
Yeah.
they're synthetic hormones that mimic what women's natural hormones are, which are going to be different for everyone, and everyone is sensitive to different levels of those hormones. So if you take something that's a one size fits all, you're going to experience side effects. Now, you can find one that works better for you that maybe has lower doses and one or the other, but it's not your natural hormones. So
Yeah.
what happened when I realized, like, why can't I take this kind of birth control at the time? It's designed to mimic your cycle. So it has a synthetic estrogen, but also has this synthetic progesterone, which is called progestin, and a lot of the typical hormone. What happens is a lot of times the amount of the synthetic progesterone is too high. When that's too high, that
Mhm.
leads to you feeling like you can't do anything, you don't have any motivation, you feel depressed, you feel like a zombie. You feel like you can't do anything. Your mood is awful because it's too much. So our
Yeah.
natural progesterone is just meant to help us feel more calm and more chilled out. If it's too high, that's when we deal with those experiences.
Yeah.
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 So naturally, in our own natural body, we would typically not deal with excessive amount of progesterone. As we mentioned, like what's coming? How is that progesterone getting there? Because the body released the egg and now it's producing it in case of pregnancy, right? So that's why we have it. But if we're taking a synthetic form of it, it's like too much. So
Yeah.
it's all there to mimic our cycle without the ovulation, because that's the part where we would deal with the fertilization piece. So that's how birth control works. So when women are on birth control, and of course, like I said, everybody to each his own, everyone has
Yeah.
their own thing, but you don't ovulate with birth control, with typical birth control. There's some that, make it's all it's a whole nother podcast. But typically you wouldn't ovulate. So if you're not
Right.
ovulating, the body's not breaking anything down as it would for a natural cycle, which would be your menstrual phase. So you're not really having a real period when you're on birth control, even though it's just to mimic it. So a lot of women are like, well, I feel like I am, right? And
Hmm.
that is
Right.
called something, it's called withdrawal bleeding, which because of those hormones where the progesterone would is the synthetic form, it still does the same effects where it builds up the uterus, so the body's still building up the tissue so that it tries to break down the tissue that it built. So that's what's actually happening, but it's not actually going through the experience naturally of clearing out, you know, the unfertilized egg and all of it. It's not doing that because that didn't happen,
Right.
right?
That didn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a little sidebar, but
No,
for
that's really interesting. I never thought about that. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't either. I was just like, why does this make me feel awful?
Well, the thing is, and yeah, I mean, I'm all for like everyone utilizing the resources, scientific, holistic, like whatever is helpful, but I think it's truly important that women have this information
Yeah.
about their cycles and just like you said, our bodies have so much wisdom. It's like a marvel of engineering and just really understanding what that is. It's not just the period itself. It's
Yep.
like our whole being is very much undertaking this cycle every single month. And it's so much about our reproductive system and it relates to so many of other aspects of our personality or our mood or, our energy levels, our entire being, really.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's so much, right? And I just think that there's not enough education and awareness around it. If there were, we'd make better decisions, right?
Hmm.
So for your late luteal phase, the two chakras that are aligned here are going to be your crown chakra and again, the solar plexus. And I'll talk about why the solar plexus in a minute. But for the crown chakra, which is not tied to any feminine or masculine, that can help us in a sense. We focus more on like spirituality, connecting to nature, connecting to higher power, just connecting in that way. That can kind of alleviate some of that anxious energy, can alleviate some of that um, frustration that we can hold when we go through that last phase as well. It can help us to slow down and be a bit more introspective and kind of find more silver linings and things as well. And so our crown chakra is really focused on that big connection piece. And so we can do things like volunteering as well. We can do things like just spending time around animals or whatever it is, just to kind of help take that focus off of ourselves and our issues or whatever's going on and just kind of
Yeah.
surrender in a way. That's a good time to surrender. Like, okay, I've done all I could do all month long. I surrender, I let it go. I let it
Uh-huh.
go. Whatever needs to be released, I let it go, give it to higher power, help me out here. So
Yeah.
yeah, that could be a good time to do that and reflect on like, hey, what's all the stuff you did this month? And what's within your control, what's not in your control. And you can let things a good time to let things go during this phase.
Might be good to spend time in nature too.
Yes. Oh, yes,
Crown
absolutely.
chakra.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, yes. Absolutely perfect for that. Just, I love a good hike and going out in the forest or woods or just nature in general. The trees, the leaves, everything releases so many things that you don't even know that you're taking in when it comes to like the oxygen levels, the scents and all of that from the different flowers and plants that it
Yeah.
literally heals your body, like rejuvenates your body, replenishes your body with so much. So you typically feel better after going on a nice walk. It also resets
You're
your brain when you walk.
right.
Yeah, just by just scanning, we naturally scan, and that actually resets the brain, which is something that they use in a lot of trauma therapy called EDMR, where they will
Mhm.
have the eyes like rapidly move back and forth, and that resets the brain. So just going for a nice walk is actually very, very healing and helpful to do that, especially in nature. I like to avoid the treadmill as much as I can.
Too. Me too. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're not close to a forest, just being out
Yeah,
in
just out.
the air, like getting fresh air is just so rejuvenating, I feel. And, hearing the birds and getting a nice bit of sun on your face, right? Like it can
Yes.
all just be helpful for having that more clear, connected feeling.
Yes, absolutely. So just being mindful of that, and then also your solar plexus again is a good time to focus on that, but not focusing on the energy portion of it, because obviously our energy is probably very low during this time. We usually have a lack of energy, but want to focus on digestion and also that anger piece again. So I want to focus on the our inner focus when it comes to the solar plexus. Now, it's
Mhm.
also really important to make sure that we are focusing on digestion during this time because when we consume a lot of foods that may have what's called omega-6 fatty acids, those foods those are typically going to be like red meats, vegetable oils, which could also be a lot of processed foods, a lot of fast foods. Those foods produce something that is called, well, it actually creates what's called prostaglandins in our body. And that is a chemical that the body uses in times of inflammation. When we have too much, it makes our cramps during our menstrual phase very severe because we have an excessive amount of it. So we want to reduce things like alcohol, smoking. Those things also trigger the body to produce prostaglandins because we're damaging our body when we smoke or drink alcohol. Even though it didn't feel like it, we feel great. But our body takes a hit when we do, especially very excessively and very close to our next cycle. The body's like, oh,
Yeah.
there's damage here. Let's pull on those prostaglandins, right? To help with that. So our body naturally goes through its own, it's called pro-inflammation, our body goes through pro-inflammation during our menstrual phase to trigger the cramping, to remove the lining of what was built up that's no longer needed. So the body's like, hey, let's try again. We're going to start all over again. And we'll try again to duplicate our awesome selves. So we don't need this. It's too much. We got to start over. We got to make a new home for the new life. So the body will then remove itself. So it does this on its own, which is pretty fascinating. So I'm like, this is some
Yes,
serious like mechanics here. So the body
seriously.
will, yeah, so it triggers for the body to do that in order for it to really could do those contractions and release what's there. It pulls on the prostaglandins that are in the body. But if we have too much, then it makes it very severe. So if you deal with a lot of like severe cramping, I used to deal with that, like so awful. Like you can't move, I'm throwing up,
Mm.
like the pain is just so severe. And of course, when you're trying to look up information on the cause of this, it's most likely going to tell you you have endometriosis, right? Not saying that you don't, but there could also be other reasons why we have such severe pain and nausea. And we don't know why. We're not realizing that our diet can even play a role into that. So we want to be more mindful about the foods we're digesting and getting more fiber and not consuming too much of like processed foods during this time, that we're taking omega-3 fatty acid, maybe a supplement or getting fatty fish. Omega-3 actually helps to reduce the inflammation. So that has
Mm.
like an anti-inflammatory reaction to our bodies. It's kind of like pouring the water on the fire. So taking omega-3s can help drastically so that you're not having to deal with so much heavy cramping, things of that nature. So that's another reason why I suggest to focus on the solar plexus again. And also, sometimes we feel that anger and frustration and the suppressed emotions that we've been holding all month long during this week as well. So our body is also cleansing those emotions. So allowing for yourself to manage it though, right? Because when we don't manage it, we feel out of control. We feel like I
Yeah,
can't, you feel like you just want to run away, you want to hide, you don't want to be available to anything. But if you can learn good techniques of how to manage it, then you feel more empowered, you feel more in control, and you feel like I can handle this. I'm okay. I don't have to feel like 50% of my life is
yeah.
awful, which is how I felt for a long time. I'm like, I only get 2 good weeks. But
Right.
now it's nothing like that. So those would be all of the different chakras and phases that we go through and how we can create more harmony and balance in that way.
Wow. Wow. This is super enlightening. I just, yeah, I love how you tie it all together and just, I feel like I have so much even more respect for women and their
Right.
bodies, my own body, and how if we work with that and if
Mhm.
we are able to, be in harmony with our own cycles, it's just so much to our benefit and
Oh
to
yeah.
everyone around us, of
Yeah,
course.
especially.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not blowing up our relationships.
Right, just because we need more omega 6, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes. Take your fish oil supplement, get your omega-3s in, and you'll be okay.
Yes. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's complex and it's such a privilege to be a woman. It's also a great responsibility.
it
So
is. It's a
I'm just,
huge responsibility.
yeah. There's a lot going on. So I just really appreciate you for bringing your wisdom and sharing this profound wisdom with all of us today. This is so helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so happy to share and share more. And thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And Lindsay, can you tell us all, like, how do you work with women? How can someone go deeper into all of this? And And what would be the next step? How would they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm mostly on Threads, though, at Divine Feminine Wellness. You can also head over to the website, which is Divine Femme Wellness. Fortunately, the URL was taken, but Divine Femme Wellness. There's also a membership for women to be able to enjoy a program that has access to videos for meals that they can align with their their chakras and their cycles, learn what exercises to do, and also how to take care of your mind and also beauty and morning and evening routines. They'll get access to all of that, as well as trackers and things of that to keep you on track and take care of yourself throughout your cycle experience. So, yeah, you can find all of that on the website.
Well, that sounds super supportive. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of The Feminine Frequency, and we'll see you next time. Ciao for
Awesome.
now.
Bye.